Spider-Man.
So here's the deal. We've actually gotten our hands on the first 3 pages of the Spider-Man Brand New Day script, and that's kind of wild when you think about it, because studios don't usually just hand this stuff out. But this time, Marvel Studios decided to share it through Entertainment Weekly as part of an exclusive feature, and honestly, it gives a pretty clear look at how the movie kicks off. It's basically the opening chunk of the film, and even though it's just a few pages, there's a lot packed into it, especially when you combine the script itself with the notes they included alongside it. Right from the beginning, you can tell they're trying something different with how they're promoting this movie, because instead of just trailers and posters, they're letting fans peek directly into the script. That alone feels fresh, and it kind of builds excitement in a more detailed way, because you're not just seeing scenes, you're understanding the intent behind them. And it also makes you wonder if they might do something similar for other upcoming projects, maybe even something big like Avengers Doomsday. Anyway, the first page starts in a pretty interesting way. It's set over the studio logos, and instead of just music or visuals, we hear Peter Parker reading a letter. That detail alone tells you that the letter is going to matter a lot. And if you've been following the story, it's pretty obvious which letter this is. It's the one he wrote to MJ at the end of Spider-Man No Way Home, but never actually gave her. So right away, the movie is picking up on that emotional thread, which makes sense because that ending left Peter completely alone. As the voiceover starts, Peter introduces himself in a really simple but kind of heartbreaking way. He says something like, "Hi, my name is Peter Parker and you don't remember me." And that line alone hits hard because it reminds you of everything he lost. He even says what he's about to explain will sound crazy, but he believes MJ will trust him because she can always tell when he's lying. That's such a small detail, but it shows how much he still understands her, even though she doesn't remember him at all. Now, before the script goes deeper into the dialogue, there are notes that explain what's happening visually, and this is where things get really interesting. They describe this kind of montage where Peter's memories are shown disappearing like he's being erased from everything. It's very similar to what happens in Back to the Future, where a character slowly fades out of existence. Basically, any trace of Peter photos, documents, all of it just vanishes. That answers a question a lot of people had after No Way Home, because fans were wondering how the world could forget Peter if there were still pictures and records of him. But here, it's clear that the spell didn't just wipe memories, it erased him completely from history. And that's honestly kind of terrifying, because it means he's not just forgotten, he's been removed from existence in a way. The emotional impact of that is huge, and the script really leans into it. There are multiple notes emphasizing that Peter is completely alone now, like truly alone, not just socially, but in every possible way. Then, we jump forward in time about 9 months after the events of No Way Home. Peter is in the same small apartment we saw at the end of that film, and he's working on his gear. He's strapping on a web shooter that he built himself, loading cartridges into it, and it's clear that everything he uses now is homemade. There's no backup, no advanced tech from Tony Stark, and no help from Stark Industries. He's fully on his own, which is something fans have wanted to see for a while, because it brings him closer to the classic version of Spider-Man. But even though that independence is kind of exciting, the script doesn't present it as entirely positive. While he's working, Peter suddenly gets a sharp headache, and that moment is highlighted as important. The notes even say it's the first sign that living like this is taking a toll on him. Something is changing, and it's not necessarily a good thing. That idea connects to what we already know about the movie, hinting at some kind of transformation. There have been teases about mutations or changes in his biology, possibly linked to spider traits, or even something like venom. It doesn't look like they're going full man-spider, but there's definitely a sense that Peter is evolving in some way, and it's tied to both his physical condition and his mental state. And speaking of his mental state, the script really leans into how isolated he is. At one point, we see that the closest thing he has to a companion is an AI assistant named Evie. That's kind of sad when you think about it, because this is someone who used to have close friends like Ned Leeds and MJ, and now he's talking to a computer. It reflects how much his life has shrunk, even though his responsibilities as Spider-Man have grown. There's also this really emotional moment where he looks at objects connected to his past. A Lego figure from Ned, a coffee cup from MJ, and you can tell he's holding on to whatever pieces of his old life he can. Eventually, he finds the letter he wrote to MJ, and that's when the voiceover becomes more direct, because now we know he's actually reading from it. As he reads, we see him repairing his suit using a homemade fabricator, which is described as kind of a DIY version of advanced tech. It's not sleek or perfect, but it works, and that fits the tone of his current life. Everything is scrappy and self-made because he doesn't have access to anything else. Then there's a moment where he checks his phone and sees a video posted by Ned. It shows Ned and MJ at MIT starting their new lives, and it's a bittersweet scene because they look like they're moving forward, even though Peter isn't part of that anymore. He smiles watching them, but it's clear he's hurting, and that contrast really defines his character at this point. As the scene shifts, Peter reflects on why he's made everyone forget him. He explains that something terrible was going to happen, and the only way to stop it was to erase himself from everyone's memory. That reinforces the idea that his sacrifice wasn't just personal, it was necessary. Eventually, we see him fully in Spider-Man mode, sitting high above the city. And this is where the theme of identity really kicks in, because he starts talking about how he's not just Peter Parker, he's Spider-Man. That line might sound simple, but it carries a lot of weight, because it shows how he's starting to prioritize Spider-Man over his own personal identity. There's even a note suggesting that he might be misunderstanding something his Aunt May said about responsibility. Instead of seeing it as a call to help others while still living his life, he interprets it as a reason to isolate himself completely. That's a big shift, and it explains why he's choosing to live alone with the truth instead of reconnecting with people. And honestly, that mindset feels like it's going to be one of the central conflicts of the movie, because it's not sustainable. You can't just erase your personal life and expect everything to be fine, even if you're doing it for the right reasons. By the time we reach the end of these pages, Peter makes a decision, at least for now, to focus entirely on being Spider-Man. He puts on the mask, jumps into action, and we move into a montage sequence. There's even a note about his suit having visible wrinkles and texture, which is a small detail, but kind of important because it shows how grounded and realistic his new setup is. What's really cool is that his new suit is inspired by the versions of Spider-Man played by Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. So even though he's alone, he's still carrying lessons and influences from those encounters, and he's using them to shape who he becomes next. Overall, these opening pages do a great job of setting the tone. They show a version of Peter who is stronger in some ways because he's independent, but also more vulnerable because he's isolated. And even though we've already seen parts of this in the trailer, having the full context makes it feel more meaningful, because now we understand what's going on inside his head. And the best part is, this is just the beginning. The movie is likely going to explore a lot more of his transformation, his struggles, and maybe even how he starts to rebuild connections. But for now, this opening makes one thing very clear. Peter Parker might still exist, but he's slowly being overshadowed by Spider-Man, and that's going to come at a cost. And that wraps up today's video. If you want to stay in the loop with all the latest movie and series news, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a big thumbs up, because I'll be bringing you more updates on upcoming movies before they even drop, so keep an eye out for that, along with the latest on your other favorite shows and movies. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.